Hi, everyone. I'm here with Natalie Moore today, and we are going to be talking about the women's superpower, as I'd like to call it, and the female advantage. Did you know that 85% of women will have hormonal imbalances at any given point in time? 75% of people with autoimmune diseases are women. We, as women, are 50% more likely to hit burnout at any given point in our life. Now, these are crazy statistics, and there's so many things that we can think about when we think about our health. One thing that we have never been educated on, even me now as a 40-year-old, and only really getting enlightened about, is actually our hormones, our menstruation cycle, and how that impacts our energy levels throughout the month, not just to mention throughout the day. And we've got Natalie here today to talk to us and educate us about the cycle, the stages of it, not just the stage of when we're bleeding, and how to really optimize our health as we go through the cycle of menstruation. So let's just start off with that. Can you give us a little bit of an intro on why this is important, and then what are the 4 stages?
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me here. And look, it's vitally important, because the more women know about their bodies, the more they can then start to support themselves, particularly from those lifestyle elements across their whole health, being their physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual health. And unfortunately, up until, say, this generation, we've just never learnt about our menstrual cycles, about our biology and the way that our body works, and most importantly, really how to harness our cycles, because as you said in your opening, it really is a bit of a superpower, and it really is just such an information source for us to understand the ebbs and flows of our energy and how to actually use those ebbs and flows across our day in life and at work. So with our cycle, we typically have a 28-day cycle. And it's really important to note here that every woman's body is unique to her. And so although textbook says a 28-day cycle, it might vary, but you might find that your cycle is every month 26 days, or every month 24 days. So think about your own cycle and connect to that. What we do have, though, is 4 very distinct phases across each of our monthly cycles. And we actually liken it to almost being 4 women every single month, based on these different distinct phases. So our menstrual phase is our what we liken to the winter. So that's the time of about 3 to 7 days. That's when we have our bleed. And that's the time where we tend to really draw within. So think about winter, where, we sort of come into that hibernation. We're wanting to slow down. We're wanting to just, nurture ourselves. And that's a very pivotal phase in terms of connecting to ourselves. After our menstrual phase, we then move into that follicular phase, which is our spring, or what we liken to spring. And again, think about spring when we're coming out of winter. It's like that sense of rebirth, where we've got an increase in energy, the sun is shining, we've got, heightened level of energy. And this phase can really start, say, or last for 7 to 10 days. Then after our follicular phase, we then move into the ovulation phase, or what we liken to the summer. So again, we've got another level of energy on top of what we had in the last phase. This is a much shorter time, so usually about 3 to 4 days, and very much an expressive phase. So we're really ready to come into ourselves, show our full self unapologetically, and just really come into that high energy. And then the next phase is the luteal phase, or what we liken to the autumn phase. And this is typically our longer phase, lasting 10 to 14 days. And essentially, it's about us starting to wind down. So it's think about autumn, where the weather's starting to get a bit cooler. Our energy is starting to ease off a little bit. We're starting to find that perhaps we're starting to nest a little bit, and just, really getting ready to coming into our menstrual phase, our bleed phase. And so we start to see a decline in our energy. And, those very distinct phases, which we love connecting them to the seasons of the year, because you can really connect with the highs and lows in energy. And essentially, when we've got this information, we can use it to not only support ourselves, but also give ourselves permission to slow down when we need to slow down, or ramp up our energy and get out and be vibrant and be energetic. So, you know, when we're fully connected to our cycle and our phases within it, our physical, our mental, emotional, and spiritual health really has a greater capacity to thrive each month. And interestingly, the way that you feel in 1 month across your cycle also plays a part in how you feel in your next cycle as well. So it's information that continues on across your every month and every year.
Thank you for that really cool description. I actually really like it. And as you were talking, I was thinking about a flower. Like, if we really, you know, after all, we're natural, nature-like beings, right? We're not robots. And if we think about how a flower goes through those stages, those 4 stages in the season, it's very much like that, right? We have this point in time where we want to be vibrant and show and express. And then equally, there are times where, if you think about how you would look after a plant or flowers, you would look after them in different ways. And it's how do we attend to ourselves in those different stages or those seasons. So it's a very interesting way to describe and that analogy. I want to know practically, though, a lot of women are now in the workforce. So there's definitely that transition of from generations ago, where we did have that opportunity when we were a little bit more homebound, but more and more women are engaging in the workforce. They're running businesses, or they've got multiple things that they have, as well as parenting. So then how do you suggest someone to direct their energies without completely becoming insular when they need to continue contributing because of their work or nature of work?
Yeah, look, really great question. And I mean, we know women who have completely mapped their work day and their life schedule to their cycles, and they really use that to a T pretty much. But of course, life ebbs and flows, and it's not going to be in sync with our cycle. So we need to find ways to be able to support ourselves. And that's where those lifestyle elements are really critical as well. So for example, let's look at the winter phase or our menstrual phase. And that's where, as I said, we're really coming into our inner knowing. Our ego is quiet, and there's also a time for, you know, greater intuition, so we can connect to our gut and connect to the messages that perhaps we're hearing or feeling in our body. We've also got heightened emotional awareness too. So one of the key things that we can do during this phase is really start to connect to those messages. So think about if you're having a conversation in the workplace, and perhaps there's, you know, 2 strong personalities, and maybe there's conflict that's arising during that conversation. When you know the phase that you're in and you understand what's actually happening in your body, you could stop and reflect. And that's where that emotional intelligence is really pivotal, because you can connect and say, okay, I can feel that I'm being triggered by this, but I also understand that the phase that I'm in is also playing a part too. So we can almost take a step back and remove ourselves from that conversation and say, you know what, now is probably not the time to have this conversation. Perhaps it's a time that we have it later on, but just acknowledging that this is what's happening and choosing the way that we respond based on how we are feeling.
And is this because hormones play a huge role in our emotions and our cognition, and we just have not understood that very well as women?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, we've got 2 very strong hormones, progesterone and estrogen, and they ebb and flow across our cycle. And so with our menstrual phase, the progesterone drops off and estrogen does too, but then that starts to also rise towards the end of our menstrual phase as we're coming into those higher energy times, because estrogen is that hormone that really supports that higher energy. If I go to one of the other phases, for example, let's go to the opposite phase in summer, or the ovulation phase, where estrogen is at its peak. And so our communication skills are heightened. You know, we're ready to take action. We're full of power, passion, and energy. And this is a great time to have some really crucial conversations. So, you know, we might have conversations about our work. We might have conversations about our pay. We might actually have the confidence to actually be open and forward about, you know, our work or our impact or our mission that we have. And so, you know, that time of our phase is a really great time to start new projects, or try something new, try even exercise. There's actually evidence suggesting that when we start something new in our ovulation phase, that we're more likely to continue it on and build some positive habits behind that as well. So yeah, it's fascinating. You can probably hear my passion when I talk, but it's fascinating when you delve into it. Even for me, when I do this every day.
Yeah, and again, it goes back to that self-awareness piece and really coming back in tune with your body, so then you can start to operate, optimally based on what you're feeling. And so you mentioned lifestyle as well. So whilst there are things that are out of our control, there are things we can control, like exercise and nutrition. So when we think about these 4 cycles or stages, what are your recommendations around types of exercise and kind of also fueling ourselves at the different stages?
Yeah, definitely. So again, if we come back to that menstrual phase, the winter phase, that's the time where we don't really want to be doing a lot of strenuous, high intensity exercise, because again, we're coming into ourselves, so we're sort of retreating in. But movements such as even gentle walking, yoga, Pilates, probably more restorative type yoga. They're the types of exercises that we can really do that we're still getting great benefits, but we're not overexerting our body. Because the key message here too is that when we are pushing ourselves beyond our limits, not just based on our cycles, but just in life, we're adding added stress to our body as well. And so stress really, trumps everything when it comes to our nutrition, our movement, and our sleep. And so we want to really make sure that we're nurturing our body and we're not putting added stress onto our body. When you think about, let's go to the follicular phase or the spring phase, where we're starting to get a heightened energy and boost and change in those hormones, that's where we can start to increase our intensity of exercise. So perhaps you're starting to look at such things as going for a run or a jog, or getting into a more higher intensity exercise class, because we've got that energy and we've got those hormones behind us that are really supporting that extra exertion in that exercise. From a food perspective, there's lots of things that we can do, but there's hormone feasting foods. There's also foods that can sort of support us across different phases of our cycle as well. For women, when you think about the luteal phase or the autumn phase, that's where we want to really be getting those cruciferous veggies in. So things such as cauliflower and broccoli are amazing to support our entire health. Also looking at gut health as well is really critical too, because our hormones are tied closely to our gut health. So when we can support that microbiome in our gut and really support our gut health, that also supports our hormones and supports, the different phases that we're in with our cycle. Again, from a food perspective, think about the seasons of the year, as I mentioned. So summer, in our summer phase, or when we're living in summer, we tend to eat more fresh foods, smoothies. We might have salads, and that's the time where we might try and eat like that as well, as opposed to our winter, where we're looking for more of those comfort sort of feasting foods as well, if that makes sense.
Yes, it does. And I was just thinking about that, instead of binging on the more sugary, and because that is also comfort food, it's so much more beneficial to then just have more cooked and steamed veggies, because you can still get that sort of heaviness and warmth that comes with that, as opposed to, the option or the alternative of raw salads. So it really makes sense. We can't have a conversation about hormones without touching, the topic of menopause. So tell us a little bit about what are the key symptoms that someone might be moving into the phase of menopause. What are the changes in the body or the moods that we might experience?
Yeah, look, and it's great that we're talking more and more about menstruation and and menopause is one of those phases that we have absolutely not been talking about because of the taboo and the stigma behind it. Just as an opening, menopause or perimenopause can start from as early as our 40s, even as early as our mid to late 30s. And the real first signs that you might be coming into perimenopause is that irregularity in your cycle. So you might start to notice that you've got shorter cycles, or cycles have been a little bit longer. You might even have heavier bleeds as well. And this is where tracking your cycle is really imperative because it's all information. And it's not until you really start to connect to your body and start to recognize some of the changes that you can then sit up and say, okay, something's happening. I can feel something's happening, and not be afraid. There's a lot of fear for women coming into perimenopause or menopause. And information is power. So yeah, definitely irregular cycles. Hot flushes is another big one that might happen, and mood swings. So there's some of the key symptoms that women might start to experience. Also, some changes in loss of confidence. Brain fog. All of a sudden, we've been able to show up and present or host meetings, and then all of a sudden we can't. And many women have spoken that this literally does happen overnight, and they're totally confused as to why it's happening. And again, it's that information, right? That when we've got that information, we can be aware of it. And also, even mood swings too. Some women report in the early days that they've gone from being quite placid and even toned to all of a sudden having a very fiery outburst that they absolutely have no control over. One thing I do want to say with menopause is that, yes, we are all going to go through it, women, but every woman's experience is going to be unique to her. And some women might have a heap of symptoms, others might only have one or two, and that's okay. It's about understanding your body. And we often say that the more that you listen to and heed the whispers that your body gives you, particularly coming into this phase, especially if you're over 40, then you won't have to hear them yell when they're screaming at you, down the track. So the more you know about your body, the more that you can support it, know your cycles, the smoother the transition can be, because you've got the power, you've got the knowledge there. And that is really our greatest defense in not feeling the fear or the shame or embarrassment that comes with menopause.
And so whilst we're all unique, and so our experience of menopause will be different and unique to us, what are some general things that you would advise women? How do we look after ourselves when we start to move into menopause?
Yeah, look, I touched on it before. If there's one thing that we can do, check your stress levels.
Mm-hmm.
I often talk about, and I'm quite passionate about teaching people about stress responses. We can't always minimize stress around us, that is around us, but we can be very mindful in the way that we respond to stressful situations. And as I said before, stress really can exacerbate symptoms and bring them on a lot worse than probably what they may need to be. We also find that women coming into this phase are nutrient deficient. So, they're starting at a very low base from a nutrition perspective. So the more that you can do this work, say through your cycles, in really fueling your body positively with, your proteins and your good carbohydrates and healthy fats and supporting your gut health, again, the better that you can come through this transition because you're starting at a higher base. And then, sleep again is another big one. Insomnia is one of the symptoms of menopause. But if we can embed some great positive sleep routines prior to coming into this phase, again, we've got that foundation around positive sleep. And I'm not going to say it's going to keep insomnia at bay, but at least we've got some tools and we've got a bit of a routine in place that it might help support our sleep and our rest. So whenever we're supporting women about menopause, it's really around that stress, the sleep, the nutrition, and also the movement as well, which are really, four pivotal areas that women can focus on.
It's really about those basics, isn't it? It's doing those basic things that create such a strong foundation, and that becomes a lifestyle, really becomes a lifestyle versus seasonal. I'm going to do this for this period of time, feel great, and then fall off the bandwagon. So that's a really a good note for us to end on. Can I just ask one last question? If we have women that are more interested to know about their cycle and even how to learn how to track it and then get on top of this piece of awareness, where do they go? Where should they be looking? And do you even recommend any sort of tracking apps to understand your hormones?
Yeah, look, so obviously we do this work at through our business at Own Your Health Collective and work one-on-one with women to really bed down their cycle and what they may need. There's a great app that I use. It's called Stardust, actually, which again helps you track your cycle. There's another one called In the Flow, FLO. But you know what, I typically say to women, just really start basic. And I'm a big believer in writing. So I think if you can because with those apps, it's just giving you information and you type in things in or pressing a button. When you can actually take a moment each day, whether it's at the end of the day or the start of the day, to just connect with yourself around how you're feeling, what your cycle's like, that really can help just connect intuitively to yourself. I'm a big believer in using those tools that we've got at our disposal, and using writing to connect with that, and that goes a long way to understanding your body better.
Thank you. Thanks for that, Natalie. I think my biggest takeaway from this conversation is I got to listen to my body. I've got to stop, pause, and listen to my body, because it's really that is the alarm bell, isn't it? Whether it's gentle in the background or starts to scream at us. Thank you so much. I think it's been a really insightful conversation, and I'm glad that you shared some resources towards the end. I know that your own business is really focused in this area. So if you want to tag that website again, happy for you to say that.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. So it's ownyourhealthco.com.au.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thanks for your time today, Natalie.
Thank you so much.